Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today we are going to paint this watercolor landscape, and I want to thank my friend Lincoln Kenney for this reference photo. He posts the most gorgeous paintings from his hikes, and I finally worked up the nerve to ask him if I could use one for a reference photo, and he said yes. So thank you so much, and I hope that I did your hiking spot justice. I'm starting off sketching with an aubergine Derwent Graphitint pencil. These are so great for doing your under sketches for landscapes because they have this they're a mix of pigment and graphite, so as you paint over them they kind of wash out and they just have a lovely earthy quality to them. They're a wonderful product. You can actually get them in blocks and pan paints as well if you prefer just to paint with them. They have a beautiful granulation and they are just stunning and earthy and wonderful. I'm using a bunch of rando watercolors from this palette that I got secondhand about, I don't know, 25 years ago. It's just a random assortment of paints, and it came in this Pike palette, and I just love it. And I've added to some of the wells, and it's just a lot of fun. Now, to do the sun here in the sky, I'm wrapping a quarter in a paper towel and pressing that into the sky, and that gives me a beautiful round sun. And you know, when like the sun is just burning bright in the sky, it's mostly just white. And now I'm just kind of throwing in some of my granulating watercolors. Now this is a palette that I made out of tubes I already had. What I did, and I have a whole blog post on this if you want some really nitty gritty info, is I went through the paints I had and I looked for pigments that should granulate. Then I tested them out to see what actually did granulate. And then I put those colors in this palette, and it's a mix of different brands. I have some nickel titanate yellow from Cotman back in the day when the Cotman watercolors were superb. I have some, cadmium colors like cadmium green, cadmium blue, or cerulean blue, different colors with cobalts, the different colors that have those granulating, like cadmium Bordeaux, what a beautiful granulating red brown. Mars colors, just gorgeous stuff. And I just put them in one palette, so I knew if I grabbed those colors, I would get some texture when I painted with them. And that's what I was going for. I don't think it really showed up to the best of its advantage in the painting, in like the foliage, but I feel like I did get a good amount of texture in the rocks. And man, I could just paint rocks all day. I love rocks. I don't know why, but I'm just drawn to them. I love if I'm painting a seascape on the Rocky Coast of Maine, I'm painting the rocks. I'm really more obsessed with the rocks than I am anything else. And I don't know what it is. It's a sparkle. It's I think I love seeing beauty in the ugly. I love finding beauty in the ordinary. And I feel like rocks are such a good subject for that. When everyone was doing the rocks of kindness, like the painted rocks, they were finding rocks and painting them. I'm like, I'd rather paint a painting of rocks. It's just something about rocks. I don't know what it is. Maybe I was a geologist in my past life. I don't know. Interesting to think about though. So I'm putting a little raw sienna around my sun there because there is this little golden hue. And also there's this like golden glow over the mountains, which is kind of weird because the sun is so high in the sky, but there's just like this glow at the horizon of that beautiful warm gold. And I wanted to get that in there. Doing the mountains in just different ranges of like bluey gray and green, and I don't use gray paint generally. I mean, it's a very, very rare occasion if I use gray. What I'm more doing is using my palette mud. And so if I've got green and I want to gray it, I'm going to add some of that pinky crimson color. If I have blue and I want to gray it, I'm going to, put a little orange in there or mix a little orange and add it in there. So that's what I do about grays. I did have somebody ask me if I would do a video just on gray paint. And it's like, honestly, I usually don't use gray because I just go for whatever I'm painting, whatever my local color is or the color of the object I'm painting, I will go with its opposite and mix it in. And if you're not really comfortable with color theory, get yourself a color wheel, look at the color you have and go straight across the color wheel. And that's going to be your opposite. And you mix those together, you mix those complementary colors and you get neutrals. Now this is something I love to do. I love to, if I have this mass of like foliage or nondescript stuff and the silhouettes are strong, like the tips of the trees, I will just wet it and just drip color in and let it do its thing. And I find it doing its thing is usually more interesting than me painting a bunch of trees. I did feel like this got a little heavy at points. And that's something I'm kind of working with. I'm not typically a landscape painter per se, unless I'm out painting in plein air, because I love to go outside and paint in the summer. I'm a summer fan. That's my season. I love to be out in the summer. But in the studio, I don't do that many landscapes. But I was just really struck by his photography, and I wanted to paint his landscapes. They were just so pretty. They remind me of the places that I go and hike and I see, and just gorgeous. I'm not a skilled photographer. I don't know what it is. I can photograph still life stuff all right for like reference stuff, and I can photograph artwork. I've learned that over the years. It takes practice and skill. But like landscape photography, I just don't have the eye for it. I have the eye, to take a picture. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, I really love those strong silhouettes of the pine trees, and I love to just let them kind of drip into the ether with lots of color. And that's what I'm doing here. And I get these little pockets of, I like that, these little pockets of joy where it's like, oh yeah, that's working. I love it. I dig it. And then you get this you have these like areas of just meh, where you're just like in this hot mess stage. You're like, oh boy, I love that. I don't want to lose that, but boy, I don't love that. And you kind of like have to, pick and choose, like find areas you can accent, and then, I don't know, disguise the parts you don't like. I kind of like the negative painted bush that I have there in the front over on the left-hand side there. But sometimes it's hard to isolate those areas and make it work. Maybe I could have kept it a little bit more abstracted, but I really wanted to find the rocks. The rocks are definitely the focal point. Usually if there's rocks in an element in one of my paintings, they're going to be the focal point, because that's what I enjoy the most. And I just love the almost chiaroscuro play of light and shadow in rocks. And then, so I was painting this. I wasn't narrating. I was kind of listening to an episode of Dexter, and I had that kind of playing on a small screen. I had my laptop split screen from this reference photo and Hulu where I was watching Dexter. And, so towards the end, I do zoom in, and I'm thinking there, and I actually see there's these little puddles of water in the rocks. And I'm wondering if this might be the top of a waterfall or something. So we'll get to that later. But yeah, I kind of like go more general when I start off a landscape and just kind of get the broad overview. And then I might zoom in at the end and see if there are some little snacks of detail that I want to accentuate there at the end. But I try to keep it pretty broad, and that's generally how I work any painting. I will go broad to refined. I will start with my basic shapes, messy but accurate, and then I will kind of hone in on some of the little details that I feel like could use a little bit of attention, and just having those little dashes of attention. Because when you're looking at something, you can't focus on everything. You focus on one thing and everything else kind of blurs, right? And so that's kind of like what I like to do with my painting. If I have a little attention on a puddle or on a rock or on a branch or something like that, I want everything else just to kind of like support that bit of attention and just be kind of the ambiance around that. And so a lot of times I'll get in there and I'll be like, oh, why did I put that in? That's too much detail. Why did I have that detail back there? Like some of these tree trunks. It's like, well, maybe I should have just left that in the ether, and because I'm not really sure, what do I want my focus to be? I'm using the brushes from my set I released with Craft Ammo. This dagger brush is really nice for adding in some like sharp, interesting shapes. And I've got the cat's tongue that's great for juicier, bigger shapes, but it also gives you a little bit of a randomness and allows you to carry a bunch of paint and to drop in good amounts of paint. I feel like I'm getting a little heavy here, to be honest. I kind of like what's happening, and watching it back in time lapse, I can say, oh, why didn't you stop there? Why did you just not stop? And it was funny because I did take a lot of breaks in this painting, because as I'm doing this, I'm actually working on this custom lid for this bamboo palette that I have, and it's out of resin and there's so many layers, and I'm going back and forth. and so I am getting a lot of breaks in there. This is good. I'm using some cadmium yellow. And cadmium colors are very opaque. So even though it's a watercolor, the cadmium watercolor yellow will stand up against that background. And looking at it now, I'm like, oh, I kind of like what's going on here. Why did I keep going? I should have stopped. But then, I don't know. It's, it's kind of hard to finish a painting and know if it's done. It's the overnight test is probably best, where you leave it overnight and you come back and the little painting elves have come in and maybe done something to your painting like you've slept, like the shoemaker's elves, and then it's all done and it's perfect. Because like right here, I'm like, you know, I could have left it. I think I could have left it. But for whatever reason, I wasn't really happy with it. And the sun's behind those trees, right? So there is some beautiful shadow play on the rocks, and I wanted to put that in there. And that's with my palette mud, is some Prussian blue. The thing I love about this palette is it doesn't contain a lot of the modern pigments. It's got Prussian blue, not phthalo blue. It's got, it does have some Quin Reds though. Like I think the alizarin crimson, actually I don't think it's alizarin crimson. I think it's rose madder that's in there, and I'm kind of digging that. Now here I'm going in with some white gouache. I've just thrown a couple little dabs of gouache on my palette, cheap gouache, jelly gouache in fact. And I am adding in the little highlights on the puddles just to bring out like, yeah, there's some water trapped in there. This is like after a rain or something where we've got that top of the mountain type sitting water tide pool vibe. I guess it wouldn't be tide pools because it's not tidal, but yeah, I want to get that. And I noticed that with the paint dry, we've lost some of the vibrancy. So it's like, I got to do something to add some sparkle back. And I'm doing that with some gouache. This is just the Anagani gouache that I reviewed last year. And I have to say, the gouache is still moist in the cups. It hasn't dried out. That's a really great palette. It's 56 colors. It's like $40. You really can't beat it. Like, cause it's like 30 mLs of paint. I did purchase some Daniel Smith gouache. I'm going to try that. I'm thinking about buying some Holbein and Winsor Newton, and I have some M. Graham gouache. So I'm thinking about comparing them. But Sarah Burns' studio has a really good gouache comparison, both student grade and professional grade. I definitely would recommend you check out her video because she's much more familiar and skilled with gouache. But as far as the cheap set goes, I have no qualms with this gouache. And especially if you're using the white, I mean, what's it going to do? Fade to white? Well, it's already white, so not worried about that. And yeah, I'm just kind of using this to perk up some colors where I felt like it was just too dense. My color was too dense. I didn't really have much of the white of the paper showing, and I wanted to get in a little bit of detail on especially this. I think it's like a spruce right here in the front. I felt like I needed a little bit of texture, and I needed a little bit of detail to add some depth and scale here. So that's basically what I'm doing. It does look very washed out, but I think that's more of the lighting in here where I'm filming. But I was feeling it was like a little washed out looking. So I wanted to just perk it up a little bit. I need to zhuzh it up. We need some perkiness here. So that's what I'm doing. And I actually played with a fan brush. You can see me working with that now. Some people ask me what I recommend for gouache. I like the Zen All Media brushes by Roll and Line Nickel. They're golden Taklon. They're just the perfect oomph, I think, perfect stiffness for this quality of paint. And yeah, and this is pretty much all I'm doing to it. I'm pretty happy with it. I didn't want to overwork it. Who knows? Maybe I'll do more to it later. But there you can see the finished product. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope it inspires you to do some landscape painting for yourself this summer. Thank you so much for watching. Please give me a thumbs up before you go, and subscribe if you'd like to see more videos from me. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you have a very creative day. Until next time, happy crafting.